Good. All right. Good morning. I'm pleased to be here this morning, joined by Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman, Dr. Aaron Thompson, Dr. Jason Glass, Dr. Houston Barber, as well as some special guests, which you will hear from shortly. Last week, I delivered my State of the Commonwealth, in which I reported that the state of Kentucky, that our state is strong, and that our time, Kentucky's time, is here. I discussed how even through a year of the pandemic and unprecedented natural disasters and the pain that we carry from them, that Kentucky had the best year for economic development in our nearly 230-year history. This week, on Thursday, I will outline my budget proposal. Its theme is Our Future is Now. Because now, not next year or the year after, but right now is when we must make the game-changing investments that turn 2 years of economic gains into 20 years of great prosperity for our people. It's how we leapfrog other states. It's how we ensure we are never 40th or 45th in anything ever again. I believe we have the ability, maybe even the destiny, to lead this country in so much that is good. And this budget takes major steps to get us to that place. Today, I'm unveiling the first and perhaps the most important step to ensure we are never a flyover state ever again, that we, Kentucky, are the destination. Right now, we are winning. We have a booming economy and record economic success. Ford picked us for their biggest investment ever. Amazon picked us and operationalized its biggest investment ever. Pratt picked us for its biggest investment ever. Novelis picked us for its first new plant in nearly 30 years. These are world-class companies, joined by the likes of Toyota, Fidelity, GE Appliances, Firestone, Alstrom Monks Joe, Kruger, Crown Cork, Kentuckiana Curb and Seal, and so many others. World-class companies betting their futures on us. Our time is here, and there is no question that we have arrived. But having arrived, we have to make the investments necessary to stay. To stay a world-class destination for world-class companies, we must have a world-class workforce. And that starts with education. So, given our future is now is when we must make the game-changing, perhaps the state-changing investments in education. And my budget bill will do just that. My budget adds record funding, nearly $2 billion in additional funding over the next biennium, pre-K through 12th grade. That's right. I said pre-K. This budget starts at the earliest age, providing universal pre-K, fully funding universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds and funding full day kindergarten for every Kentucky child for the first time ever. No longer will tens of thousands of our children be left out of preschool or Head Start, programs that we know provide positive outcomes on children's early literacy and mathematics skills and foster long-term educational success. The cost is more than affordable. Pre-K for every 4-year-old in Kentucky costs $172 million each year of the next biennium. Combined with $140 million provided in the last budget for full-day kindergarten, Kentucky would now provide our school districts with the resources needed to fully implement a pre-K through high school system. And let me tell you, early learning is not just critical. With our current budget outlook, it is more than affordable. Fully funding pre-K for all 4-year-olds is less than 8% of the budget surplus we have going in to this budget. It's not just something we can afford to do. It is something we must do. It is a game changer. Perhaps, again, a state changer. But our investments can't stop at pre-K and kindergarten. I'm proud to say that in my budget, we are making the largest single investment in K through 12 education in our history. These historic investments start with a 16.9% increase in SEEK funding. These are the dollars that we provide to our schools for everything from transportation costs to support special needs students. It has been more than 30 years since this type of investment has been made. We are further supporting early learning for kindergarten through 5th grade as needed with an $11 million each year expenditure to provide statewide learning focused on literacy and mathematical ability and to implement regional coaching and training programs. Our districts and schools with the greatest needs will now have the coaches that they and their students deserve to get off to the absolute best start. And we are providing a 12.5% increase in the SEEK base per pupil funding formula for elementary and secondary schools. This investment provides an additional $397 million over the next 2 years. This budget further fully funds the school district's costs for student transportation. That's $175 million annually, which is an 81% increase in funding over the last budget. What this means is our schools won't have to bear this cost, freeing up funds to do so many additional important programs. What it means is we are not burdening our schools with an unfunded mandate that we say they have to meet. They can use these funds for things like school nurse programs to help students stay healthy throughout this pandemic. Next, we are providing $22.9 million each year to restore funding for professional development, as well as provide funding for textbooks and instructional resources. This is basic. Our children cannot learn if they do not have the resources to do so. And with this funding, no teacher should ever have to dip into their own pocket to provide the necessary resources for their classroom. A great education system requires more than learning resources. We cannot ignore the social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students. Lieutenant Governor Coleman spent much of this year traveling to schools to talk firsthand with students about their mental health needs. That's why we're providing $6.2 million each year to address this by assembling statewide staff and 8 regional social emotional learning institutes so that our educators have access to the best training about how to help their students with their mental health needs. We're also providing 2 new grant programs for school districts to provide wraparound services to students impacted by violence, substance abuse, child abuse, and parental incarceration, and other training resources to help students. We must do more to help our youngest Kentuckians heal and deal with the adversity in their lives. Career and technical centers are a critical component to the high school curriculum and so important with the jobs of the future that are coming our way. It helps us meet the needs of students in academic achievement, career exploration, career preparation, and leadership development. That's why I've included $97.4 million this year to support the renovation of another 11 local centers. The Career and Technical Education Center still in need that applied for the last round of funding that had amazing projects that are funded in that $97.4 million are the following school districts: Boyd, Carter, Edmondson, Fleming, Grayson, Lewis, Livingston, McCreary, Marshall, Nelson, and Union counties. It feels good to read off counties for positive reasons from this podium. And we're providing another pool of $75 million for a new round of applications to renovate more career and technical education centers. An additional $8 million each year is provided for funding to 12 locally operated career and technical education centers that have not been a part of the formula funding in the last 12 years because during those years we didn't have the money. They include centers in Ashland Independent, Bardstown Independent, Boone, Boyle, Hardin, Hopkins, Hart, Laurel, Oldham, Spencer, Washington, and Whitley counties. And additional funding is provided for state-operated area technical schools in the amount of $3.2 million in 2023 and $3.6 million in 2024. And we have not forgotten our schools chosen by the Department of Education that need additional leadership. We call these turnaround schools. We need to be there if a school is not at the level that we desire for our students, and we need to make sure that we are investing to get it back on track to provide the highest level of education for every single child. So we're providing $14.4 million each year to support all 48 schools that have been identified. And I'm restoring a program that should have never been cut, the longstanding library grant program that was eliminated, with $2.5 million annually for grants to local libraries. And while there is more on this historic, game-changing, state-changing investment in pre-K through high school, I'd now like to invite Dr. Jason Glass, Commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Education, who will then be followed by Dr. Houston Barber, Head of the Superintendents Association. Dr. Glass.
Thank you, Governor Beshear. In what has been and continues to be a very tough couple of years for our schools, we are so pleased to see these proposed historic investments in public education. Thank you, Governor Beshear, for your unwavering commitment to public schools. There is no greater investment in our state's future than education, which ensures that the next generation is prepared to successfully enter the workforce and contribute to the incredible economic growth and job development Kentucky has worked to achieve. Education helps ensure a quality and prosperous life for all current and future Kentuckians. The priorities that the Kentucky Board of Education and the Kentucky Department of Education had for this budget cycle included all-day kindergarten funding, funding school transportation costs, and restoring funding for professional development for our public school teachers. All of these are supported by this budget proposal and so much more, notably the addition of universal pre-K funding, which is just a game changer, as the governor said. And all of these investments will contribute greatly to the quality of education for Kentucky's public school students. Governor, our schools desperately needed another shot of hope that things were going to get better, and this budget proposal delivers just that. On behalf of Kentucky students and everyone working in our public schools, thank you. And now I want to bring up one of Kentucky's great superintendents, Houston Barber from Frankfort Independent Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Glass. I come to you today and so excited. I have a 4-year-old right now who gets to have some opportunities in the future. And I think about, I even have a senior in high school and all the unprecedented funding that can go towards our students in the Commonwealth, both as a father and as a superintendent in Kentucky. This unprecedented budget presented or will be rolling out and as part of the K-12, pre-K-12 opportunities is unbelievable, Governor Beshear and Lieutenant Governor Coleman. I just want to say that I am so thankful and grateful, and on behalf of, as a superintendent in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and as a leader, an education leader, I believe that this will spark an incredible movement towards the success that needs to happen for students who are looking to read by the third grade level, and also embracing what was previously what I would consider unfunded mandates that need support, and really taking about the opportunity to get SEEK back to the levels that and restore those levels that would be what would be inflation included. So on behalf of, as a parent and as a leader in the Commonwealth, I think the governor's budget is one of the greatest presentations that this Commonwealth will ever see for the future. So thank you so much and appreciate it.
I want to thank Dr. Barber as well as Dr. Glass. This budget was put together with extensive consultation with the Kentucky Department of Education. In fact, a lot of back and forth on different ways that programs like pre-K could work. So thank you for working so closely with us. Now, let's talk about our outstanding educators. As Lieutenant Governor Coleman says, the future of our economy is in our classrooms. And we need to make sure those educating our children are paid what they're worth. That's why this budget, while providing historic funding to school districts, does ensure a minimum 5% salary increase for all school personnel. That's in addition to the regular salary schedule increases for certified staff. This is the first identified pay increase for educators in a budget since 2006 to 2008. And there will be no health insurance premiums for increases for school employees. So that is a real 5%. And still, our teachers are not paid enough. According to the National Education Association, Kentucky ranks 42nd in the nation at starting salaries. Remember me saying, I don't want to be 40th in anything ever again? This should be one of those areas that we change. Because right now our new teachers average about $37,000 per year, and having pensions been removed for new teacher hires, it is being underpaid with no retention incentives. We're going to change that unfortunate statistic, and we are going to provide motivation to stay in the classroom. In this budget, I'm providing $26.3 million each year for a student loan forgiveness program that'll provide a maximum of $3,000 a year annually to help a teacher pay off their student loans, and they can stay in that program for 5 years if they are teaching in Kentucky. That is a possible $15,000 incentive helping to pay off those loans to keep our teachers in the classrooms. Our teachers continue obtaining a higher education to advance their career, and we want to encourage that. This helps them get there. It could be what it takes to become a teacher. It could be what it takes to get that next degree in their teaching. We are also fully funding our teachers' pensions and medical benefits. And we have not forgotten about funding for family resource and youth service centers. They do such special, incredible work. When you want to know who gets a kid that comes in from the cold shivering that coat, it's our Friskies. I've included almost $6 million more each year to support them. There are 874 family resource and youth service centers for about 1,200 schools, serving nearly 650,000 students and their families. Sadly, despite the incredible work they do, their funding has not been increased for years. And these are the educators who help us address kindergarten readiness, successful transitions to school and adult life, student achievement, and well-being. They also work in our communities to promote physical and mental health for families and students, as well as opportunities for families to learn together in safe environments. So with that, I'd introduce our resident teacher here, our Lieutenant Governor, Jacqueline Coleman.
Thank you so much, Governor. And I have to echo the sentiments that we've heard here today, that we are so grateful that we have a governor and an administration that is education first. And that's not just in word, that's in action. And you're seeing that in real investments today. I think he would agree with me that as great of a job as has been done with this budget, the real stars of the show are our teachers and our students in our schools. And that's why we're going to hear directly from some of them today. When you think about how a budget is put together and how you can really highlight your priorities, here are the three ways that the three lenses, I guess you could say, that we use when we identify these things. And first is, does it adopt a kids first mentality? Kids first. That's always how we look at things. Secondly, does it take care of the people who take care of our kids? And last but not least, does it provide the resources necessary for our schools to do what we have asked them to do? You're going to hear a lot of really big numbers today. You're going to hear from a lot of really great folks. But at the end of the day, it's kids first, take care of the people who take care of our kids, and give the schools what they need to do what we've asked them to do. And so first, we're going to hear from Julia Eady, who is a student from Rowan County High School.
Hello, my name is Julia Eady. I'm a senior at Rowan County Senior High School in Eastern Kentucky. I've been fortunate enough to be in attendance with the Lieutenant Governor and her events across the Commonwealth, and heard directly from students about what they wish they had access to and the challenges they've faced in the past year. My peers are struggling with mental health needs and obstacles, such as bullying, self-harm, suicide, gun violence, homelessness, and food insecurities. These all impact learning, and being safe and healthy is a basic need. Investing these funds in access to mental health services on site, as well as access to updated resources, will directly benefit students' social and emotional learning. Professional development and social emotional learning curriculum mandates and recommendations will provide necessary resources for awareness and education for teachers, students, and families. These historic investments in education will directly address the things that we have heard from our Kentucky students. Thank you, Governor Beshear and Lieutenant Governor Coleman, for your investment in my education.
That's great. Thank you so much, Julia, for those words. And next up, we have a student from across the state, from where Julia is. We're going to hear from Sam Smith, who is a student at Davies County High School.
Hello, my name is Sam Smith, and I'm a senior from Davis County High School in Orangeburg, Kentucky. And I'm here to talk to you about our governor's historic investment in our school systems. When I heard Governor Andy Beshear wanted to invest in our schools, the first thing I thought of were the outdated textbooks I carry each and every day. For example, in my AP government class, it refers to Barack Obama as a young and upcoming senator from Illinois. As you can see, these 20-year-old textbooks just aren't helpful anymore. With this new investment, we could see the most up-to-date curriculum for every student across the Commonwealth. Along with this investment, we could see new AP classes being offered all across the state, allowing students everywhere to appreciate cheaper college and free college credits. We could also see updated and new trade school opportunities, allowing students to graduate with certificates to be work ready as soon as they step out of high school. I would like to thank the Governor and Lieutenant Governor for this historic investment in our school systems, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. The governor and I are pretty sure that we're going to work for Julia and Sam one day. So we're thankful that they gave us those videos. And I want to remind you all that they are high school students. And so, their input and their insight is invaluable. Next up, we're going to hear from some teachers. We have a couple of teachers who are going to provide some feedback on how important this investment is to them personally, as well as to the profession of teaching. So first up, we have Crystal Culp, who is a national board certified teacher. And Crystal is coming to us from McCracken County Schools.
Hello, I'm Crystal Culp, a national board certified teacher in my 25th year of teaching. In my professional career, one thing has become clear. As the times change, so must teachers in teaching. When all things are considered, teachers have the most influence on student achievement above all else, and a teacher's effectiveness lies in what they know. The importance of high-quality professional development cannot be overstated. Additionally, teachers need current and reliable instructional resources to meet the needs of a unique and diverse student population. I believe it to be true that ongoing learning for teachers is an essential part of a teacher's effectiveness and student achievement. We currently have an education-first administration, as reflected in Governor Beshear's budget that includes a historic investment in education by unapologetically providing funding for both professional development and instructional resources.
All right, thank you so much to Crystal. And last up today, we have a teacher by the name of Lori Stacy Baker. She is a teacher at GR Hampton Elementary School in Barberville, which is part of Knox County Schools.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lori Baker. I teach in the Knox County School District. I've taught for 18 years. I am currently a 5th and 6th grade language arts and science teacher, and I love my job. With the 5% salary increase, that's going to help us because we're not going to have a second job. And we have always had a second job. I hold 3 degrees and have always worked, earning money another way when school is over. So that would be big for us in my household, as I'm sure it would be for other educators across the Commonwealth as well. I just pray and hope with everything in me that when these things are proposed, that they will pass and be approved, because I think that they will all have an impact on the future of education in the state of Kentucky, and that's what we need right now. Thank you, and very honored to have this opportunity to speak with you today.
So to our students and our teachers from across the state, thank you so much for your input all along this process, but also for your input today on what a huge difference this is going to make in your day-to-day life in your school system. I'm going to turn it back over to Governor Beshear.
Thank you to Lieutenant Governor Coleman. Now let's talk about the next step in building a world-class education system, higher education. My budget provides the highest funding increase at nearly 12% in decades, and it is needed. From 2008 to 2020, about $250 million of general fund has been cut from 9 public post-secondary education institutions. Past budget cuts have led to tuition increases and cutbacks. Restoring a significant share of past budgets will better position these institutions to graduate the world-class thinkers that our world-class companies and world-class opportunities demand. My budget also includes $60 million for the Bucks for Brains program to be matched dollar for dollar with private donations. This program invests in our future by providing a solid source of funding for research-related activities and to support Kentucky's higher education institutions. Bucks for Brains helps us to support our world-class economy by aligning post-secondary education with the emerging needs of business and industry. And we have a lot of new and exciting business and industry coming to Kentucky. These funds also help students prepare for employment and nurture an entrepreneurial climate. Another top priority for public education is paying down the debt of deferred maintenance for our 9 post-secondary education institutions. We cannot let their buildings crumble. And without assistance, they're putting funding into those instead of into our students. My budget includes $500 million from the general fund, the first significant funding for asset preservation in 20 years. And we are investing funds, including agency bonds, other funds, as well as third-party donations for construction of new capital projects for universities. And they include, but this isn't all of them, at EKU, constructing a new model laboratory school. Moorhead is getting a new science and engineering building. At Murray State, we're renovating classrooms and offices to support science and nursing curriculum. NKU will be expanding the Herman Science Center. UK is constructing a new health education building. U of L is adding on to its speed engineering school. WKU is constructing a new Gordon Ford College of Business. And KCTC is renovating and replacing buildings in E-Town, Jefferson County, and Somerset. My budget supports, in the end, 19 projects from these universities that I believe include the top 2 priorities of each of those universities. And we are helping our post-secondary education students by increasing the need-based financial program called CAP, or the College Access Program, and also the Kentucky Tuition Grant Program. Both of these programs have benefited from the dedication and growth of lottery receipts in the past several years. In fact, we're able to fund all eligible applicants for the first time ever in the most recent application cycle. Everybody who applied, we had the dollars to help. And when leveraging federal Pell Grant dollars, the CAP program now covers full-time tuition and fees at KCTCS and nearly covers the average tuition and fees at 4-year institutions. In other words, these great programs, along with the Pell Grants, can remove the financial barriers that so many face. And we know tuition and fees are only part of the total cost of attendance, and that additional general fund dollars we're going to use to increase the maximum CAP award from $3,100 to $3,100 in fiscal year 2023 and $3,300 in 2024. And finally, I'm excited that we are pushing for the second budget in a row, the Better Kentucky Promise Scholarship. This new program would provide the last dollar funding so that any of our students in Kentucky could get an associate's degree and certificates at our public universities and private nonprofit institutions. This eliminates all financial barriers for those programs. What this would mean is we can cover the cost of tuition and mandatory fees for approximately 6,000 additional students in our first year and 9,700 in our second year. Talk about making a major leap, about bringing so many other families up to a new level of education. As the son of a first-generation college graduate, I know what that can mean. It changes not just that person and that generation, but their kids and their kids' kids. This is a chance to make such an enormous leap here in the Commonwealth. And we are supporting KSU by providing the necessary funding that that university needs. And I support KSU and its mission, and we must make it right. The funding that we are providing, the $23 million requested, must be signed off on by CPE for each and every expenditure, making sure we have the oversight on the ground every day. So now, in hearing about, again, nearly historic, certainly game-changing investment in higher education, I have Council on Post-Secondary Education President, Dr. Aaron Thompson.
Thank you, Governor. I have to tell you, what a privilege to be here. You know, in 1990, I was an educator in Kentucky and saw unprecedented funding for CARA, and that reformation of K-12 education has had significant outputs here in Kentucky for our children or young people, especially from a little man from Eastern Kentucky. I saw that really working for many of our school districts that didn't have the kind of funding that some of our larger school districts did. 1997 post-secondary reform, we saw unprecedented funding for post-secondary educations, reformulating the way we looked at education, the value that we have for our technical education, as well as our four-year degree, graduate degrees, professional degrees. And this budget, Governor, is historic. This proposed budget by you really goes to the heart of what we stand for here in Kentucky. And I'm not shy as a first-generation high school student and college student to not, just build on this idea of affordability for many of our students who don't believe they can go to school or they can't afford to go to school. This Better Kentucky Promise, this investment in need-based scholarships, all of that goes to the heart of equity in my mind. But let me be clear about where higher education's at. Our economy is booming. And if we're going to continue to boom post-pandemic, you can't do it without an educated workforce, and you can't have an educated workforce unless you have a strong higher ed system that's well-funded. This budget goes to that. We can't be competitive with faculty unless we can pay them. We can't have scientists invent new vaccines for the upcoming items unless we have people in our universities and our research labs doing that. Bucks for brains goes to that. So much of what this budget does, Governor, though, comes down to the heart of what I think is good for all of us. We have to look at our state as an ability to actually help every young person in the state to think about that they can go to college and they can achieve what they need to achieve once they get out of college. And that's to be a part of this economy. Now, I would be remiss, though, some of you know that you've heard me talk many times, in order to have a strong higher ed system, you have to have a stronger early childhood system. And actually putting money into universal 4-year-olds in preschool is huge in so many ways. But I want to point out a way that's not been said so far. And that is that many of our parents can't afford to send their kids, because we're talking about $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year out of their budget to do this. This is truly something that allows them to do that. And we know for a fact many women and others have been displaced during this pandemic. This helps in so many ways. We're happy to be a part of Kentucky. Our colleges and universities have readied themselves, and you've already seen it, but we're readying ourselves for the future of Kentucky. So, Governor, we want to thank you for this budget.
Dr. Glass got shot of hope in, and Dr. Thompson got the creation of vaccines in. But he is exactly right. Our workforce development piece will be releasing on a different date, but there is no question. One of the biggest impediments on workforce participation right now is childcare. And while I think pre-K is so much more than childcare, it is the fastest, biggest way to address a gap, especially in childcare deserts, and we can get it done in this budget. We are in a transformative time. Whether we're referring to COVID or economic boom, it is clear that things are going to be different. A transformative time demands a transformative budget. And we'll be releasing additional parts tomorrow and Wednesday with the full unveiling on Thursday. But as I wrap up today, I'm going to mention a few points on this budget, and then I'm going to have our budget director, John Hicks, probably repeat some of them. This budget is real, and it is responsible. Our economy is surging. We are rapidly recovering from the economic impacts of COVID-19, and we saw record investment in 2021. Our successes have vaulted our finances to a level that allows us to make these game-changing investments and to do so responsibly. We have an all-time record-setting revenue surplus. The revenue estimates for the 2022-2024 biennium are bright, with $1.9 billion more in general fund revenues than budgeted in the current year, and a growth of 7.5% that follows the 10.9% from last year. These are the best back-to-back years we've had since 05-06. And our general fund receipts have grown 15% in the first half of the current fiscal year. So as you'll see, our budget makes investments responsibly. It pays down the largest pension liability. It has the lowest debt ratio since the policy was adopted, while adding to the largest rainy day fund in our history. Just as importantly, it has less in recurring spending than we have in recurring revenue. In other words, this budget is in the black, not in the red, in that we have more money that will come in next year and the year after than we have expenses that happen in the next year and the year after. And I want to mention that this budget was prepared by full-time budget staff that was created by state statute. This is the same full-time executive branch budget staff that has drafted the first version of our state budgets for every year we can remember in our history. They have unmatched experience, and they communicate with the executive branch every day, not just in select committee meetings. Drafting and filing an executive branch budget without the knowledge or input of the executive branch itself is unprecedented. It's unprovoked. It's unprofessional, unwise, and perhaps even unlawful. So now I'd like to introduce Budget Director John Hicks, who's going to go through just how solid our financial footing is and how this budget is more than just responsible. It sets us up for brighter years ahead.
Thank you, Governor. Let me repeat a little bit of what the governor just said about how real and responsible that this budget is. It's based on sound economic assumptions that are agreed to by a 10-member consensus forecasting group that consists of outside economists and financial experts who under state statute determine the official revenue estimate. We're the only state in the country who has this setup of outside experts only. No institutional representation, no partisan representation. So a very objective group. This budget devotes non-recurring resources to one-time uses. The governor mentioned that we expect a revenue surplus in the current year of over $1.9 billion. Well, in this governor's budget, he uses those resources one time. Lots of investments that as the governor rolls out his budget, you'll hear more about. It pays down on the Commonwealth's worst funded pension plan, which is one of the worst funded in the country. It creates the largest rainy day fund, our budget reserve trust fund, and then adds to it. It pays down on the debt of deferred maintenance. State government has a large physical plant, particularly our post-secondary education institutions. And we're using some of this one-time money to cash fund this deferred maintenance gap that we've been unable to address in many years. It's more than structurally balanced. Structural balance in the fiscal terms means that your recurring revenues, your recurring expenses are aligned. Well, in this case, we're spending less in recurring expenses than we're taking in recurring revenues. And what that's going to do, that's going to set up the next biennial budget in good position to do other investments. It establishes, for the first time in Kentucky's history, a disaster relief and recovery fund. Right now, when we have floods, tornadoes, and storms, and we need additional funds to match our FEMA grants and to call out the National Guard, we have to draw from our rainy day fund. Well, we want to set up a separate fund that's particular to the needs of responding fiscally to natural disasters and to not use our savings account as a checking account. And as the governor said, this budget, while it does have additional debt, stays way below our 6% debt policy of revenues, of debt service to revenues. And in fact, even with the additional debt the governor mentioned with the 19 post-secondary ed projects, we're going to spend less in debt service in this budget than we are currently spending in the current fiscal year. And so as the governor said, year to date, our revenues are up 15% through the first half of the month. The wages and salaries are coming in strong. Withholding revenues is the largest part of our tax base, and it continues to grow month after month after month. And this is many months after federal fiscal stimulus has assisted household and unemployed individuals and businesses. So with that, Governor, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
So, moving forward, I look forward to my budget recommendation getting the same treatment and consideration that every General Assembly has afforded every governor in the past, regardless of party affiliation. Last week, when I addressed the state during the State of the Commonwealth, I spoke of the strength and the spirit of our people when faced with devastating natural disasters and a continuing pandemic. And I talked about how even in dark times, there have been real bright spots, like record-breaking strength of our economy, which has paved the way to make these historic investments in our educators, schools, and children. Let's get to work, moving our state not right or left, but moving it forward and creating the world-class education system that creates the world-class workforce that keeps us on top with economic development. Thank you, and we will open it up to questions. Looks like first I've got on my list Bodie Brooks.
Governor, do you have any response to the House GOP releasing their budget ahead of time of your budget address last week?
So the House GOP, for the first time in state history, released a draft budget, actually filed it before the governor, under state law, is supposed to provide the recommendation. My hope is that it was a stunt, maybe meant to take some steam out of the speech that's coming up on Thursday, and that they're not breaking with both tradition and the law, and drafting a budget for the executive branch without any participation from the executive branch, or maybe the judicial branch, or maybe the Department for Education. It's not wise to draft a budget for someone without talking to them, right? And given it wasn't drafted by the people who do this every year, we already see problems. We see omissions of things that a press release will say is in there that aren't in there. We see problems in the drafting, which maybe we can't even enact and do something that we all agree on. And under state law, it's not the way that it's done. Let me just mention two statutes. So 48-100, right, says that I, as the governor, have to present a budget branch recommendation for the executive branch. And the Chief Justice does the same for the judicial branch. And that's what they even call it, the branch budget recommendation. Well, then there's a statute about what the General Assembly has to do, and that's 48-300. And that one says that they shall adopt the budget branch recommendation. In other words, the one that I provide with modification. So under state law, if they keep pushing forward one filed before the executive branch or the judicial branch, they violated their own statutes too. And it's just not a good policy. You know, I heard their leadership talk about cooperation after my State of the Commonwealth. Well, surely we ought to at least talk to the executive branch about the executive branch budget. And my hope is that we can do that moving forward. It's the beginning of a long process. Mark.
Call their actions unlawful? You just put the law up on the board there? Are you considering any legal action? And what would that even accomplish if you did?
Well, I hope we shouldn't have to. I mean, listen, that's the drama piece, but there's a game-changing, state-changing opportunity here in a historic increase in SEEK funds in pre-K for 4-year-olds. Now, I know it's easy to grab a hold of the drama of they did this or you did that, but that's not what this is about. It's about, do we grab the best opportunity in our lifetimes to create a world-class education system? Is it more important to cover the House is saying this and the governor's saying that, or we can afford pre-K for all 4-year-olds? That we can do in deferred maintenance, something we haven't been able to do for our universities, which hopefully can help hold down tuition. That we can fully fund the SEEK transportation, which gives us so many other opportunities for whether it's nurses in schools or others. I think what's really important here is not that they filed one and that we'll be filing another. It's the game-changing investments that are possible in this one. And I'd hope anybody would pause and say, well, maybe our budget ought to include universal pre-K too. Carolina.
Have you taken a good look at the budget that has been filed already? And do you believe there are points where both your budget and their budget have commonalities?
Well, the House budget does more on some things than the current budget. And that's good, but just treading water or moving ahead a couple of strokes when we have the chance with the best budget in my lifetime to make incredible gains means we're leaving maybe the most special moment that we have in our lifetimes to truly lead. I do think we have a quick graphic that we put together of things that are in our budget that are not in the House's budget. So my budget recommendation will provide $685 million more in SEEK funding than the one that was filed over the 2 years. Ours has universal pre-K. The House's does not. Ours requires teacher and school staff salary increases. The House's does not. Public transportation, we have $115 million more than the House version. Social emotional learning, we include funding. The House does not. Turnaround schools, we include funding. The House does not. Early learning initiative, we include funding. House does not. Vocational education centers, we include funding, and the House doesn't. On post-secondary institutions, $57.5 million in additional funding. And the governor's recommendation, it includes the Better Kentucky Promise scholarships and post-secondary education new construction projects. So that is very quickly what we've been able to see. Now, remember, in this process, changes can be made as it goes. The Senate certainly will have changes as well when it reaches that chamber. But, you know, in the very least, the House should look at the recommendation that we're going to provide on Thursday and say, can we do better? I mean, that's the way the process is supposed to work. Phil, where is Phil? All right, Phil had to go for a live shot. Lawrence.
Regardless of when the House files this budget and you propose your budget, Republicans have a simple majority in both chambers. Is your proposal just simply a wish list that doesn't stand much chance really to go anywhere? Is that concerned?
The question is, given they have a super majority, is it just a wish list? It's a chance to transform our education system for the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If this is just viewed as who has how much power, we're never going to advance. And just because you have the power to do something doesn't mean that you should. Listen, if we leave universal pre-K on the table, shame on us. Doesn't matter who's in charge and who gets to make the decision. If we fail to make the biggest investment since CARA that could rocket us ahead, shame on us. And it doesn't really matter who's in charge. I mean, my goal is to be the adult in the room. I'm not going to break 100 years of precedent or the statutes that we've created on how to do it, but I'm willing to work with the people that did. Again, it shouldn't be about the drama, but we should follow the same process that every General Assembly has followed with every governor, Democrat or Republican. So when we break from those things where everybody has a voice, that we can make really unwise decisions. And I think that we will have a budget of unintended consequences if we don't do this in the right way and in the normal way. But again, there is a lot of time and a lot of opportunity. Karen Czar is on the line.
Good afternoon, Governor. Thank you, Virginia, as well. Governor, for the last several months, you have talked a lot about making Kentucky a destination spot instead of a flyover state. What are some of the conversations you've had with company heads who are considering or have chosen to invest in Kentucky? What have they said about our public education system compared to other states that they are considering or did consider? Thank you.
Well, in my conversations, we haven't talked about direct comparisons, but we have talked about needs. Needs for quality engineers on the post-secondary level, needs for more vocational and career training, which we're investing in here. But so much of it isn't always just workforce, and we're going to be releasing workforce on another day. It's also that these people are moving to Kentucky and putting their kids in that school system. So much of, especially when we get a CEO to move and to move the whole company, it's not just, will my company thrive? It's, will my family? And having that world-class education system ensures that we never have an impediment. And the world changes so fast right now. We've all seen that so fast. Having the funding to make sure we can transform our education system with the speed the world's moving is absolutely critical. Maddie McQueen, WTVQ.
Hi, what would you say in your budget is the thing that you are most worried could not pass through and could be modified?
I would be concerned if we fail to meet the moment. We are in historic times. We just had the greatest economic development year in our history. World-class companies are choosing us. They're investing in us. We have to invest in our workforce. At an opportunity where we can structurally afford and even stay in the black as opposed to the red, $2 billion of additional funding in pre-K through high school. We have to. I mean, for so many years, there's an argument that we haven't met our constitutional obligation under SEEK. This is our chance not just to do the minimum, but to truly vault ourselves. I mean, I'm tired of being 40-something in anything. And this is our chance to make sure we are never there again. In a post-COVID economy, so much is possible for us. But it takes boldness, it takes courage, and if you want to be on top and stay on top, you got to work for it. And you got to invest in it. And this is what this budget does. Certainly, we can afford universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds. The $1.9 billion surplus right now, it's $174 million a year. This is a no-brainer investment that we need to be making. And if you truly don't just talk about our workforce, but you want to get people back to work, it is going to be one of the biggest impacts we can have in the next year or year and a half. Joe Sonka. All right, as we try to get him, I'll come back. Al Cross.
I'm here.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. First of all, what is the specific base seek figure that you are recommending? And secondly, you mentioned some problems or omissions with the House GOP budget, something that was different. The press release was different than the actual budget. Can you lay out any specifics on those problems or omissions you said?
So I don't have those directly in front of me, but we're having a hard time within the budget finding a number of the things that are in the press release. The overall seek number, John, do you have that in front of you? Okay. I mean, I know just in the 16% increase, it's nearly $500 million in the second year. I think it was 494.5 or close to that. That's additional above and beyond in the current budget. And I think it's around 430 something million above and beyond in the first year. Let me get that for you. It is in the attachments that we're sending to you. Okay.
So we're talking about 3.5 billion and 3.6 billion.
So the total would be 3.5 billion in SEEK in 2023 and 3.6 billion in 2024. Al Cross.
Thank you, Governor. I have a group of questions primarily related to timing. When was this presentation scheduled, before or after the House filed its budget on Friday? And when will we be getting an actual budget document? And how much will you be proposing for the Budget Reserve Trust Fund?
So originally, timing was we were going to brief legislators on Thursday, House and Senate leadership and others. We were going to brief the press on Thursday, and we were going to brief other groups. That's the way we did it last year after getting input from a year before when legislative leadership was upset that we'd briefed the press and made some of the information public before briefing them. Obviously, that all changed when the House filed a budget bill for the executive branch without consulting or alerting the budget branch, the executive branch. We were completely surprised. We'd been in meetings with these individuals and no one had ever mentioned it. So it required changing our timeline. And I hope the next budget, we can get back to that more traditional schedule where we can provide that briefing to legislators before the public, but the House's actions made that, didn't make that possible. What we've done today is we've given you the portion of the executive branch summary for education, pre-K through 12, as well as post-secondary education. The full budget document will come on Thursday itself when it is filed. In the coming days, we're going to present other chunks, and what you'll see is the executive summary for those areas. Again, this is not the best timing, but it's necessary given that not only budget bill was filed by the House, but it at least appeared that there are going to be some attempts to move an executive branch budget before hearing from the executive branch itself. Tom Latek, Kentucky Today. I knew we'd get to Tom.
Thanks, Governor. I'm good. You've answered all my questions, so thanks a lot.
Oh, my goodness. A press conference without a question from Tom Latek. It is historic today. Kimberly Keevy from WSAC.
Hi, Governor. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you a little bit more in depth about the proposed minimum 5% salary increase for all school personnel. When we're talking the big picture, how much is that a part of the budget?
It is an important part. You know, we are providing hundreds of, almost, $2 billion more to schools, not all of that directly in SEEK, but that is way more money than the 5% increases in salaries. It is absolutely necessary as we are facing a teacher shortage, and we no longer for new teachers have a pension as a retention element to become more competitive. That's in salaries. To retain them, that is in loan forgiveness, and where we can to reduce the cost to their families. I talked to a teacher yesterday who I thought about the 5% increase, and I thought about the loan forgiveness, but she has a 4-year-old, and that's a $12,000 a year difference for her with universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. So this gives us a chance at not only hiring, but retaining a really necessary workforce. And it's one that I will push and push and push to ensure remains or is added to any budget. Our educators deserve it. And it's going to be in line or close to what we'll be recommending for state employees, but that one is going to come in the next couple days. Stu Johnson, WEKU.
Thank you, Governor. You mentioned just a couple of minutes ago about meeting with individuals as regards to the budget. How many times have you met with GOP leaders from the House or Senate on the budget? And do you think that more of those personal meetings may have reduced the chance of the House budget bill being filed and some of this, what you call drama?
No, neither the House nor the Senate reached out to tell us they were considering filing their own budget, and that obviously took weeks or months to do. We've been in meetings with them on other things these past weeks, looking at each other eye to eye or on Zoom, given where Omicron is. My goal was to brief them before we did this, but Saturday obviously changed a lot of that. So my hope in the future is we can get back to the way this is supposed to go. I mean, under state law, the executive branch is supposed to make recommendations for the executive branch. The trained professional budget staff is supposed to prepare the initial budget. That's just the smart way of how to do things. And it shouldn't be about stealing anybody's thunder, though I don't really care about that piece. And it shouldn't be about power and control. It should be about our people and following a process that was put in the 80s and has been followed, every year since. And remember, we've heard a whole lot, and I get it, in redistricting about Democrats used to do this and Democrats used to do that. No one has ever done this. Filing a budget before the governor's recommendation and maybe even acting like they'd ignore it. No one's done that to a governor, Democrat or Republican. No House has done that, whether controlled by Democrats or Republicans. So, unprecedented, unprovoked, but mainly unwise, right? To push forward an executive branch budget without its input, you're just not going to get a good product. And I think that about all the different branches. So let's do this thing right. And again, I don't want to focus on the drama. It doesn't bother me personally, but it leads to an inferior product, which provides inferior services to our people. This is our chance. I mean, folks across Kentucky, this is our chance. We have never had an opportunity to transform our economy and our lives, to truly lead, and for no one to ever look down their nose at us ever again. I know how that feels, and I know you all do too. And we have got to grab this opportunity, maybe even destiny within this budget, and make sure that we're not just on top right now in economic development, but we stay on top. That is possible post-COVID. Let's not punt on third down. Let's make sure that we do everything that we can to provide the very best for our kids and the very best future for us. I'll be back at 4 today to talk about Omicron and how concerning it is. Our hospitals are really beginning to fill up. So this is important today, but remember, there is a pandemic that is continuing. So I'll see you at 4, and I'm sure Tom Latek will have a question then. Thanks.